Thanks everybody for attending. For those watching on Route29Solutions.org, you can go to the panel meetings tab. If you look under documents, advisory panel documents, you'll see the agenda as well as the presentation for this morning's meeting. For those of you that are here, we have a few more people than usual. If you need to take a break for any reason, it's down the hall to the right. There are restroom facilities. If we should have to vacate this space for any reason, we would go back down the steps, we would go out the front door, take a left down the road, and then a left into the parking lot behind this building, and there we would rally with the other folks that are in this building. So far, we have not had to vacate for any reason, but just in case we do, that would be it. Let's do our introductions, and then we'll suspend the agenda for a bit. But Chip, let's start with you, please. We'll skip over you. Chip,
okay. Chip Boyles, Director of Thomas Jefferson Planning District and the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO.
Morgan Butler, Southern Environmental Law Center.
Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Kristen Sakis, Charlottesville City Council, and also chair of the MPO, and made the record show I was on time today.
You were, by golly. Great.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Chris Engel, City of Charlottesville.
Henry Wanchek, Express Colors Consultants.
Technical folks? Technical
Joel
team?
Nunzio, VDOT, Charlottesville Engineer.
Dave Covington, VDOT.
Debbie Messina, Philip Chiquette Company.
Linda Cullen, VDOT.
Al Jones, VDOT.
Allison Eton, CTP member.
John Lynch with VDOT. Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
All right, thank you, folks. And Mr. Aubrey Lane.
Aubrey Lane, Secretary of Transportation. Oh, you're up, huh?
You're it. You're it.
What is your name?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for letting me come and spend a few minutes. I know these panel meetings, Philip's a taskmaster keeping them on schedule and stuff, so I won't take a little bit of your time. Really just wanted to, again, thank the panel for all the work that they've done and review a little bit about where we've been. I was just telling Governor McCullough when I was coming down here today, and I suspect he will be down here sometime in the near future, that if you think about this, back in March of 2014, we're not even sure we were going to have any projects here. And then 11 months later, the first contracts, the panel was put together and some decisions made. And here we are today, and last night, we had 13 cross beams that going in there at the Rio interchange with all the other work. So very, very pleased with the progress that's being made. That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure as we move forward that we laid out a plan and we live to it. And I'm dedicated and give you my support in making sure that VDOT and the administration is giving the attention and the support needed to make sure that we do that. But I had a chance last night to view all the projects, and I know the Rio interchange is getting a lot of the exposure, and it is really pretty cool to see, I guess, underneath the steel and what's going on. And you can just 8 hours later come back to another ship and it looks completely different. Dave Covington and his guys and everybody at VDOT doing a great job. But also the other projects, Berkmar, if you haven't been up there, and I don't want everybody to rush up there and get in everybody's way, but the abutments for the new bridge over the Ravenna River there, just remarkable how quickly that's going. Certainly north, the 29 widening up there, and the retention ponds and all that, and of course Hillsdale, where we just got the contracts in, getting ready to, I guess,
got bids Monday.
Get that, move forward on that. So, and the signalization I know is working. So, remind everybody that's over $200 million worth of work going on, and following on this, we're on the parallel track working with the additional train that will be coming through here. Jennifer Mitchell and DRPT are working through that. So really quite a bit of activity, and it's great to see. Now, let me point out to you and the panel, the citizens, I know for a couple of different reasons. Certainly, I understand this is disruptive. One thing, there hasn't been a lot of construction up here in many years. So getting used to that, I know, is different. And we seem like continually in the urban areas. I was in Northern Virginia early this week. Construction's going on all the time up there. But also the fact that we are moving these projects very quickly. And what we want to do is to get in and out as quickly as possible. That's the quickest way to limit the disruption. But I was pleased to see the additional signage. The signage not only for helping people maneuver around, but the signage many of you I've recommended in this panel regarding the businesses in the area. And I was especially pleased last week to see some interviews where businesses, and I know it's still early, have said not only they haven't been impacted too significantly, quite frankly, the inconvenience has been offset by the additional advertising that's come. And that's been made possible by the recommendations from this panel. I know there was money set aside by the localities, and of course, we put up $200,000 to make that happen. So, very cognizant. My background before transportation was in business. In fact, I actually had a store when I was with Hoffheimer's in Fashion Square Mall. So that was many years ago, and if you look at the back of my head, you can tell that's been a long time ago. I'm losing hair back there, but I'm very familiar with the area and understanding egress and ingress, what it means to these businesses. So we will stay focused on that as we go through. And I want to particularly thank you for your contributions because, and I should mention Allison DeTunk, she introduced herself here on the Commonwealth Transportation Board. I am big, whether it's public hearings or these, and we actually, they're not done without us listening. We take the comments back and try to action them. And many of them are evident from this panel, looking with some of the things that that you guys have mentioned. I mean, there's been aesthetic changes that have come through here. At the intersection, an additional at the Berkmar up there, the crossover up there. So many things that you put out have been very valuable. And what I hope to do, and I've asked VDOT and of course some of the contractors too, we want to make this a best practices. I know you think that this, it was a controversial project. And as I've said, it's not the ultimate answer, but it's part of the solution. But I want to point out to you there are controversial projects elsewhere in the Commonwealth. I've been in Northern Virginia, and if you read anything about Interstate 66, you can know that that was every bit as controversial as this one. And the key is, though, again, the communication. And what we've done here is what we're going to be utilizing as we go across and do other projects. I think it used to be, and the required public hearings happened mostly before construction started. Well, the real communication should be not only during that period, but while construction is going on. And so we'll continue to replicate this as we go and use it as a best practices around the Commonwealth. So thank you very much. Even though everything didn't get exactly what you may have wanted, I think what we try to do is explain, here's why we've chosen these, but your input is greatly valued in that. So with that, I also wanted to take a little bit of time to answer your questions. I suppose not just the panel, but anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question too?
We could do that today.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
We could do that today.
Happy to do that today. I know it's not normal.
We'll suspend the rules.
But I wanted to anybody have anything that's on your mind. If you don't mind, we'll sit down. But happy just to have a conversation and address anything. Let's start with the panel members. Anything that I can for you as to this project. Quite frankly, anything else you want to talk about. We've had a lot of changes in transportation funding. I was talking with Sean back in the back, the House Bill 2 prioritization process. By the way, we're going to change the name from House Bill 2. Our friends in North Carolina have a House Bill 2. We're not. So we're going to be changing. But quite frankly, we were going to do that anyway. But there was no sense changing the name. It's all kind of work. That does work. So we'll do that. So throw it open to anything that Philip or anybody.
Absolutely.
I'll start with, it's not a question, but on behalf of the MPO and our chair, Councilor Zekas, we met just last night and briefed the MPO policy board on Route 29 and its progress, and the board itself is very, very pleased with the way things are going. Very pleased for some of the I think, groundbreaking examples that, like the marketing campaign that's occurring. They wanted me to express to you that we would love to have you and Mr. Tump and the CTV board whenever you may be able to, whether it's on your regular routine of having CTV meetings around the Commonwealth or a special one. We would love to host you here and let the whole board see the progress of Route 29. So we'd be glad to work with your staff in setting that up, and would welcome to have you back.
I had a chance last night to have pizza with the project team, and that came up, and I made a phone call to Carol Mathis, and whether we get it in this fall, but certainly that'll happen in the next 6 to 8 months.
Right.
Because I really would like the CTB to see what's happened here. Also, for best practices, as we try to support and help VDOT become more efficient. Look, with House Bill 2, there is going to be record construction. In fact, we've had record lane closures across the Commonwealth for last year. That's going to, I'll say, get better or worse, depending on your perspective. There's going to be more of them because under House Bill 2, all projects now are funded to fruition through construction. So that means there's certainty. That means that VDOT is not encumbered anymore by wondering if it's going to go, but it also means they got to get ready to do it. So I think coming up here and seeing how this is, how we can help them would be great. So we will make that happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christy?
Mine too is in a way not a question, but when you were talking before about best practices in this committee kind of continuing during construction, I think it's really important too to call out the fact that it's not just those of us in the room, or including the folks out here, but also the folks up there wherever the camera is. We get reports each meeting of how many people watch at home or wherever they are, and it's really interesting that people are watching, and it's that access to that information I think is really important, so people can feed in information based on what they know instead of just what they're wondering.
Governor McCullough, when we came into office, we made it clear that we were going to be transparent and accountable. We had to be good stewards. Look, I wish I could tell you we had all the money to do everything. We don't. But I think the best way to get more money is to be good stewards and say, here's what we've done, here's what we could do. I think that's a way to approach it. And I've also found the more transparent and the more accountable, the better the projects and the better results. And so we don't live stream these. We do all the CTV meetings. And I remind people, be careful what you're doing during the meeting because people are watching. So if you're going to fall asleep, people are going to see over there. But no, I do believe that. As I said, I was in private sector before. And I'm convinced in the public sector, the more sunshine, the more openness, the better the decisions, the better the projects. And that's not a criticism against the way it was, but it is saying that, look, public involvement is key. You can either have it up front and use it as you develop the project, or you can suffer the consequences later if you don't do that. And I think that is a lesson that we've learned maybe the hard way over the years, and I think you'll see it continue. But that's why never been in closed sessions on the CTV. Don't envision I will unless there's some proprietary, but I think the more people know, the better. So thank you for saying that.
Good morning. So Secretary, first, just want to say thank you for coming today and attending. We get pretty detailed updates on each of the VDOT administered projects every 2 weeks here at the panel. You mentioned in your remarks that you had a reference to the train project that DRVT is covering. I was hoping you could just give us even a general update on where that stands.
Yeah, it's so often with that, Morgan. It's you're dealing with in this particular case both Norfolk Southern and CSX because most people don't realize that all the trains that come through Virginia have to come through that 95 corridor, even though then it gets on Norfolk Southern lines going out this way. Both are impacted. Their main, obviously, revenue source is freight. And there's been a lot of articles lately about that. So it's really getting the slots and coordinating with them is where the time is taken. That's a long-winded to say. This one actually is moving ahead. In the 95 quarter, we're negotiating with CSX. In fact, we just put in a large grant request called the Atlantic Gateway request, which would increase additional slots that would help this train coming here. And also working with Norfolk Southern. You probably read about Roanoke and the station and all that, and adding this additional capacity, additional train coming through here. So I'll get Jennifer to get a detailed out. In fact, I think we'll do that at the CTB meeting. But it's on progress. I mean, I'll just put it that way. I can get you specifics, but it's really the negotiations with the two railroads.
Thank you.
But I don't know of any, real problems right now that would cause it to be delayed in that. So.
When there is something to report, it might be great to have that reported to this group.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Morgan does make a good point. We've given a lot of detail on the highway projects, but I haven't on the DRPT.
Well, we have Jennifer come up and do that.
We can,
I think that'd be good. Have
Yeah.
her come up and go through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone in the audience? Yes, ma'am.
I've been serving in a role of public observer over the last however many months, years it's been, feels like years. But I do want to just make an observation, public observation, and that's how incredibly well this group has gelled together, and it hasn't always been smooth, but under the masterful direction of Philip, who's always maintained an efficient and well-run meeting, as well as being cordial and respectful to each other, complete with the VDOT people who have done their job so excellently. It has been a real pleasure as a public member to observe this process, although it hasn't always been smooth. Everybody has worked together and has been respectful of each other so that the end result is going to be an incredible project and will move transportation incredibly well through our area. So thank you for Philip. I hope that you don't take him away from us very soon, or Deb, because they have been incredible in terms of keeping the community up to date on what's going on too. So thank you.
Look, these are tough issues. And I was just mentioning before, as of July 1st, the Commonwealth Transportation Board will become a totally independent board, meaning that once the governor appoints you and you're confirmed by the General Assembly, you can only be removed for cause. I think that is key to these projects because I don't expect we won't have a lot of 14-0 votes. And you know what? That's the way it should be. We're spending public money. People have different opinions, and they need to be vetted. And I've found if you can find 60% of the people in favor or can move, then you probably are about as good as you're going to get. I'm not being cynical. I'm just saying that these are tough decisions. You have to be free to speak your mind. You have to be free to lay it out there in the public and make the best decisions. But I do appreciate the civility and how this is done. I know that everybody doesn't agree. Look, it started from a big disagreement. And for almost 40 years, for 40 years between that. And that is, like I say, I wish I could tell you that was just something specific to this area. That's the way it is across the Commonwealth. And so, again, if we can at least say everybody gets a chance to talk and we're civil, but there's no consequences if we don't go your way, you vote your mind, I think we'll get good solutions. Yes, ma'am.
I totally agree with what she said, and I especially want to comment on the quality of the communication that I've seen, not just in this group, but with the community, and especially like WINA this morning, providing the information, but a sense of humor to go along with it, to really make it worth listening to, and to realize that this is something that is in the benefit of this entire community. And I want to thank everybody involved. You're doing a dynamite job.
Well, that's why I started about best practices. It would be a shame not to do this. And Allison, I'll make a point, CTB, bring it up. We really should have a report on these practices and insist that we, look, every project's different, but insist that we use something like this because, it's great and it's really good to get this and working for it, but if we don't use it to replicate it and use it in other places, then we'll not have gotten the real benefit from going through this.
And make it better.
And make it better. That's right.
Make it better.
And as far as taking yourself, look, I had a former partner, who's older than I, since passed away, and he would always give me words of wisdom. Some I listened to, some he probably wished I'd listened to more. But he basically said, whenever you think you start knowing it all, then that's the time you need, you're getting ready for a fall. Whenever you think you've got it all figured out, you take yourself too seriously, that's when you need to make sure, because we don't know. And as I said, these are difficult, tough, and people have genuine disagreements. And so I get that, but just try to move forward and make things better.
Secretary, it is my understanding that is it somebody from Virginia Tech is putting this into a case study so that it can be followed, or somebody is at least.
They're looking.
Okay.
They're looking at it in the context of some other projects around the country that have had accelerated schedules, which I think is good. But what will be better will be for VDOT themselves to talk about this process and see how it applies, how it can apply in other areas. In other words, the practical transfer of knowledge combined with the academic study of the process. But yeah, the School of Construction is at Tech is looking at.
Certainly the MPO would be more than anxious to work with any group that's putting that together. We've looked at it from a position too. This isn't just a good process for transportation. Large construction jobs, especially when it crosses jurisdictional boundaries like water lines, could learn from the same practice.
It's going to be important to look after it's over and to keep looking too, as we've talked, and I know Henry has said a lot. It's not just the construction, but where do we end up afterwards, not only from transportation, but from the businesses in that Rio area. So it's worth a good look and a lot of continuing discussions.
And let's not overlook, I mean, a lot of it's leadership and political will. And if you don't have that, and going around in hearings and Allison's here a lot, if you don't have that, you're not going to have successful projects. If you don't have the political will, you don't have the leadership, whether it's the local elected or in VDOT, and I want to thank again John, his team, Dave, all the people at VDOT here, Lou, everything, it all works together. So leadership is important, the political will, if you don't have either, they won't be. We get a lot of people say, well, with this new House Bill 2, it's too much input from, these are ground up, it should, the CTB should be dictated. We've tried that for many years, it doesn't work. And that doesn't mean we're not responsible for making sure that things don't connect a whole bit. But I found in my private businesses, and I found here, people that are doing it know what to be done. Most of the time, if you say, here's what my expectations are, I'm going to support you, we've got to get here, how do we get there? That's the way things get done. Not hiding them under the rug, not, anybody it's setting the expectations, and actually I've found people, when there's a will, they find a way to get these done.
This understanding of the importance of disagreement and debate, whatever term you want to put on it, is so important, because Kristen was here from the very beginning, from that March 2014, and at the beginning. You may have differing opinions. That does not devalue the value of the recommendations that come from those individuals.
Absolutely not.
And I think particularly in public business, it's important to remember that the individual who disagrees with you the most is paying the same share of the cost as everyone else, because it's not VDOT's money. It's the public's money, and keeping that in front of you at all times is just vital, because good ideas don't just come from VDOT. They can come from anywhere, and you have to be able to listen and evaluate, not necessarily end up doing every one, but if you don't hear it, you'll never catch it. And that is vitally important.
Well, I want to again appreciate it. I know I've watched some of these, and look, I want to you members, even if it didn't go your way, I do appreciate the continued participation. I mean, it's not like I have with the governor. I may have a difference of opinion with the governor, but if he says get in the boat and row, then I'm going to help him all I can. And but that's just, so I do appreciate that. And I know there are some that, to this day, absolutely believe we should have built the bypass. They may be right. The choices we had, this is what we had, are basically nothing. I think, so I appreciate even the critics who have added to this process in that, because it's been very, very helpful in going through that. So, okay, well, thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it. I'll let you get on with your meeting, but we will make sure we get up here with the Commonwealth Transportation Board
After we're done.
There'll be sometime later, because
After September.
Pretty soon. Yeah, I'm coming up to a football game. It's got to be done by September.
Well, it would, yeah.
Thank you all very much for having me today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aubrey.
All right. I'll take you. Have a great holiday weekend. Yeah, good to see you.
All right, we will continue with our agenda now. Thanks for that, and thanks for being a respectful audience. The rules are now re-engaged.
Does that mean I can talk again?
Wait, what?
You didn't call on me, so, because I had a few questions.
Oh, we can call it back.
Some other time. Some other time. It's okay.
If I had, I'll be happy to go out and get it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You see, I'm the only representative left that is not part of this love test. I'm the skunk in the garden party, the only skunk left. So you may as well keep going.
No, seriously, I had no idea you. We'll catch it.
It's okay.
No, please. Please.
Okay.
Please.
I'm embarrassed.
No.
I don't want to be targeted today.
No. Aubrey, I guess we missed it.
No, I'm
Henry
sorry.
may
I
have
apologize.
asked-
Well, I'm the only person left here that was opposed to an important part of this project. And we were all in agreement on most of the project.
Right.
But there was one project, which one it is,
Yes, sir.
separate interchange, which we didn't think was right. And we also thought that a bypass is necessary. And the first thing, I'm glad to hear that there's going to be an independent Commonwealth Transportation Board, because I was naive enough for something like 25 years. I believed they were independent. And I found out the hard way that they were not, that they were just, at the pleasure of the governor, which meant that the governor could decide what projects go and what projects don't go. And if you have a board that is independent, then they will have to work it out. And hopefully they can make quicker and better decisions regardless of what people may think about it. So my really question for you is, when you were here at one time before, you mentioned the bypass will be done by some other governor sometime in the future. So I hear you. I also know that land for the previously planned bypass is being sold, so that's gone. But being a businessman, but also an engineer by training, I'm used to planning things well in advance and get things going. So my question is, we all know that the bypass was not meant for local traffic. The bypass is really a way of trying to help out the problem of Interstate 85 not coming parallel to 29 through Virginia, because it goes parallel to 29 in 3 other states. And we all know that ideally, if the process back in the 50s had been done with the same rationale that all the other interstates were done, Interstate 85 would have continued north parallel to 29 and reached Baltimore. So my question is there anybody in VDOT thinking and planning about where that future bypass, call it Interstate 85 extension, call it Interstate 83 coming down, I don't care, but we all know that one way or another there is a missing interstate in Virginia, and it needs to somehow parallel 29. So my question is anybody working on that?
The answer is yes. It's not VDOT. It's Commonwealth Transportation Board working with VDOT as one of the issues as we decided to go this way. Actually, town south of Lynchburg was interested in continuing looking at this, and others. The practical matter we deal with, unless there's a change at the administration level in Washington, whether that's Republican or Democrat, the issue of getting greenfield projects is almost, can't get them done. It's just not going to get done. And it's not just here. We dealt with it in southeastern Virginia on 460. I'm dealing with it now in an environmental impact study across the rivers, the Elizabeth River down in Hampton Roads. They make you exhaust every opportunity on existing right-of-way before they will approve a greenfield project. So that in mind, we are looking at, we won't call it a bypass, but a corridor study of what is available in this region. And Council, I'm not exactly sure where their report is due, but it's looking at whether it's 250, whether it's 50, whether it is their existing ways to effectually expand a current right-of-way to get around for some of the through traffic. Then that's what we're looking at. I don't know where that line is on the map, but we're looking at that from that, whether it's east or west of town. I know a lot of these have been looked at before, but the practical reality is a greenfield project, whether it's a pipeline, whether it's a railroad, whether it's a highway, and that's what we faced here. I know a lot of people don't believe, but we were told by the Secretary of Transportation that bypass was never going to be permitted. They just flat out told us what was going to happen. That's the similar thing we got in 460 that you worked on. They just said it's not going to be permitted. So to answer your question is, Henry, it is being looked at, but at a broader level, but not drawing a line on a greenfield project. I wish I could tell you, say, oh, it's great, we're looking at this, it's going to happen, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with.
Well, it's pretty sad.
I want to sugarcoat it. I agree.
Other countries are developing their infrastructure from China to Europe.
Yep.
They have the bullet trains. They have put new rail lines in for their bullet trains. They continue expanding the Autobahn. In a congested country like Germany, they keep working on that. And somehow we have decided that we're so conservative, we don't do anything anymore.
I could not agree with you more, Henry. I agree. In fact, I read you're mentioning back, and you're exactly right. I read a book called The Big Roads. It's written by Earl Swift, and he talks about just this, that. A lot of that has to do with it in the planning. And you're right. A lot of decisions were made back then, and we're paying for now. But I wish I could tell you that there was a way to do it. I think we're going to look at it, but unless there's any change in it, and I say administration, I'm not unless attitude or how they apply those rules, it's going to be difficult for a greenfield project. And that just wasn't applicable to here. It was applicable, unfortunately, it was a $300 million issue with us in Southeast Virginia.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, thank you. I apologize, I didn't mean to, but any other questions then before I? But thank you, appreciate that, and we'll report, in fact, maybe we'll make it a point while we're up here to say, give a status or either what we've done on looking at that.
Would be interesting. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Aubrey.
Yep, no problem. I'll have a good day.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
We cool?
Are you all good?
All right, very good, very good. All right, on our last meeting, we had a few more viewers, 17, a few more streams, and about the same as far as average minutes per stream. More emails, which is not a surprise now that we have a little bit more going on. 2 businesses requested copies of the get-around maps. Lou is into his batch of 30,000 now, his 3rd batch of 10,000, and I hope a lot more of those go. 2 requested some clarification of detour routes during this period, and Lou answered both of those. One is actually from a business. If you remember at our last meeting, there was a business on Emmett Street that said, man, when are you going to get this paving done in front? This is down at Best Buy. And same person sent a thank you for getting that finished. There was a request for a meeting with the volunteer fire department. Lou talked to Chief Tawney, and I think they are going to schedule that meeting if the volunteer fire department feels that a meeting is necessary.
What was the purpose of that?
The purpose of that was just to make sure everybody understood the routes during this May 23rd to September 2nd period, but they've already had a couple of instances where they've either activated the Opticom system. I think all of that is where we want it to be.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
a resident was asking.
Yes.
Volunteer fire department to be sure that they knew what they.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the volunteer fire department, Seminole Trail, was requesting a meeting with the project team.
Oh, okay.
We had a
Right.
resident management meeting where they and other emergency responders were invited. We all collectively met at Lane Foreman's office, and as a result of that meeting, I think they determined that another meeting wasn't necessary.
Exactly.
But
There was a meeting,
should,
and the chief was there, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Should they desire another meeting, we're happy to meet with them at any time.
There was a request from the property manager, actually, at Goodwill, for some assistance with public awareness and asking some questions about when some of the work would be finished there. I don't know if you've noticed, but at Goodwill, and this is me expressing my opinion, their entrance situation was greatly improved as part of this project, because instead of that one in where you had to go around the building then come out the same entrance, they now have a circular pattern and an entrance and an exit back on Route 29. And that's open and in place. There was, and I did not get specifically where this was, southbound 29, complaining about south of Rio. Has that been addressed, or is that, okay, so that's one regarding retiming of the Woodburn signal. And I think between the time we wrote this for the presentation and today, we could probably say 10 regarding the retiming of the Woodburn signal, the Woodbrook signal. Woodburn. Woodbrook, my bad.
But that was true.
Well, Debbie, why does that say Woodburn? No, that's completely my bad. Woodbrook signal. And yesterday at noon, some retiming of the Woodbrook signal was activated. There's another retiming for the PM period?
Morning
period.
was done yesterday.
Yeah, the PM period was retimed yesterday, morning was retimed today. We just need to see how that works a little bit. And the issue really was primarily coming out of Woodbrook and making the left to go 29 northbound. Now remember that every time somebody gets green time, somebody gets some red time. So we're going to balance that. as best as reasonably as we see reasonable to make it work, but it may or may not satisfy everyone. I watched that operate last night, and it was obvious that retiming was in place. When we watched it, the cars that were in the queue all cleared the queue. So we'll keep an eye on that as well as all those. One asked about pedestrian crossings at Rio and 29 during the restricted period, and during this period, you have to cross either north or south of what's going on. One asked why work was done at exit 118 on final exercises weekend. All I can tell you is that it wasn't VDOT. There wasn't any work over the weekend, right, Joel? There was some work there, but not over the final exercises weekend. So that's all I can say about that. Actually, a few people asked about this traffic alert link on Route29solutions.org, and I'm glad they did, because there was a little something going on there, and when you click the traffic alert link in the last newsletter, it was originally taking you to a March 2015 newsletter. What Lou jumped right on this, and with the web folks at VDOT, if you click on news and traffic alerts now, no matter what you click on, it takes you to the same place. And that's that news and traffic alert section where you can see the latest traffic alert or the latest media release and all the other releases. So Lou, thank you for wrestling that thing down and getting it straightened out. I don't know if it's the same person or not, but another person just really doesn't like the graphic nature of the get around maps. We're not changing the get around maps, but that is what it is. One expressed some confusion with the lane markings at Route 250, 29. And what was that specifically? Do you remember, Lou?
It was about the far right lane goes up the ramp. The next lane to the right goes
straight, or it goes south,
or a straight arrow. And their complaint was that it's the eastbound 250 ramp, and they didn't feel like that was clear. People are going under the bridge and then realizing they need to get over another lane to go south.
Right. This was, something new that, although the lanes are open and available, it's not finished. That's a tad bit aggravating, but that too will keep an eye out as people are getting used to using the two-lane ramp. One asked if Rio is going to go over or under 29, and Rio goes over. The through lanes will go under. And this one was a little puzzling. Someone, for some reason, felt that the earlier renderings or drive-through, we found out from a later conversation, of the Rio GSI showed 4 through lanes in each direction. And we just haven't produced a rendering or a video drive-through that shows 4 lanes in each direction, 4 through lanes in each direction under Rio. I just don't know if that's a misunderstanding on the part of the person that wrote, or if it's maybe something from a much earlier study. I just don't know. But I did go back and look at every version of every rendering and every version of every video that we've produced since the first panel, and that's just not the case. We haven't shown anything like that.
Morgan may know this or not. I know that Southern Environmental Law Center produced some animation way back when, I guess essentially centered around hydraulic road. I don't recall if it was 4 lanes or 2 lanes on each side. So maybe it's a possibility. I'm not saying it is that, but maybe they had been looking at maybe that animation. You remember what I'm talking about?
We did. I know anything we did on hydraulic would have been years ago. I know that's what I'm thinking. So I'm not.
These things live on the web forever,
Right.
I don't know.
Somebody may have seen that, or
I think the animations we did Rio were all accurate in terms of the numbers.
I think
Those are more recent.
Seville Tomorrow also did some years
Yeah, that's what
ago.
I was
So there could be something not.
It could be. The important thing for me was this person felt like they had been kind of hoodwinked. And,
Not by you, Phil, by other people.
well, not by us, and hopefully not by anyone, and it was just an honest
It's a
misunderstanding.
possibility.
So I don't know. There were no, go ahead, there were no new postings on the provide input piece of the webpage. Chris Reed got a call and an email. One person asked whether or not Route 29 southbound could turn left at 29th, and the answer is yes. That's the full intersection there. One asked how to, if you were on Rio Road East, traveling west, how could you get to Wendy's? And the way we would hope you would go is traveling west on Rio Road East, take a left on Hillsdale, Hillsdale to Branchlands, turn north on Route 29, left at the Berkmar crossover, up to Rio Road West, and then back down into Wendy's.
That's the official detour.
That would be the official detour, and that's the way it's.
Detour is you go north and make that U-turn.
You can make the U-turn.
Near,
Yeah, at Myers Drive.
Myers
Yes,
Drive.
you could go
And
north and
then
make
it goes
the
up. Maybe the
U-turn at
quicker
Myers
route.
Drive and come back down.
If you know.
Absolutely.
If you know it's there.
Yeah, absolutely,
And the-
absolutely.
The move around map
Right.
shows you that.
Shows you that. The get around map does show you that. And what we would hope would not be the preferred route as far as the detour goes is to cut through the mall or cut through any other private property. And I know that's an issue. We're going to sit and talk about that a little bit more. But
Can we go back for a minute?
Yes.
On the express confusion with lane markings.
yes,
Later on, you're going to show us the photograph of the new sign. I guess we can discuss it specifically. But there are other issues of lane marking, and maybe I'm jumping at the wrong place. That I was up at Fashion Square Mall where the new retention wall has been built,
yes,
and looking at the traffic and seeing the trucks through the excavation, all that was very interesting. But when I look down at the actual lanes, there's supposed to be 3 lanes going northbound, right?
yes.
But the markings aren't there, so people haven't been able to figure out that there are 3 lanes.
You and I saw the same thing, and those lane markings were not down when we hoped they would be because the pavement was wet. They're down now. They're down now. They're solid. They're
In the, where we have the tape
Right.
with the curves, there's
Okay.
solid.
Right.
and then they go-
Yes.
It's under control. Okay,
Yes,
fine. I
yes,
just wanted
but
to-
very good observation. And what was happening there too was people in the far right lane, when they came to that lane shift, didn't realize they needed to shift and were driving straight into the middle lane. And yet, Dave, we saw that and
Okay.
it's fixed.
Wonderful.
Very good observation, very good. From the last meeting, we talked about adding the word Rio Road to detour signs. It has been added to 2. I know there are still some opinions that it needs to be added to more signs. That's on a list of some things we're going to talk about this afternoon about whether or not to add more signs that say Rio Road. Just have to suspend a decision on that until we have a chance to talk a little bit more. There was also a suggestion from Karen, and we talked with Karen afterwards about this, on signing for alternate routes. For example, at Hilton Heights to Berkmar or Woodbrook to Berkmar. The decision right now is that while we want to sign the official detours, we won't necessarily sign the alternate routes. Because remember, one of the things that we did talk about was losing visibility for the businesses during construction. So there's a little bit of balance there about do we actively encourage people to leave Route 29, or do you let it kind of intuitively happen? The secretary and I were at Hilton, or at the DoubleTree this morning. There was an accident on Route 29 southbound. We needed to be back somewhere in town very quickly, so he was a little bit worried that, whoa, we're going to be in a jam here. I said, no, we're not, because we're going to take a right on Hilton Heights, take a left on Berkmar, and we bypass that entire accident. People will figure that out. Right now, we're going to stick with not actively signing what would be considered an alternate route and stick with the detours. Provide get-around maps to the rental car agencies. Good call, Kristen and Dunn. Lou and Chris have been out there, which reminds me of something. He mentioned it this morning on WINA. VDOT has done many, many good things with communication tools and protocols on this project, but I'll tell you, Lou Hatter's shoe leather going in and out of these businesses with Chris Reed and Joel being on TV early morning, on the radio. You can do all those other tools. You leave out the human piece, and you leave a big chunk on the table. So I give these folks a lot of credit. That's public service. That's public service. Our open discussion period, maybe we kind of had that, but let's go again anyway. Chip, anything you'd like to? By the way, Pete and Karen did let me know that they were not able to be here today.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, I did want to bring up, I think Monday I drove through the intersection. I think as people were getting used to it, I noticed the same thing with the travel lanes, both north and southbound. Again, timing, I think things worked out and knew they'd be corrected. It could just be absolute luck, like sometimes traveling a corridor happens, but I came from the airport last night at about 6:30, which is southbound, is not very heavy, but it could have been the best time I've ever had from the airport to the 250 bypass. Hitting the lights, no traffic signal at Rio, and I know on Monday the left turn going southbound just past the mall for the U-turn had things really backed up, but that seemed to really be flowing. Maybe some changes were made in the signal timing there. But from the airport to Route 250 bypass was very, very good.
Okay, good.
Just that comment.
Okay. Morgan?
Is this the period where we want to raise observations about traffic movements, or are we doing that
Sure.
later? I had the one that I emailed the group about on
Yes.
Monday when I was turning right into the oncoming traffic from Route 29. The visibility was somewhat obstructed, and just wanted to put that back on the table. And also, the different folks I've been talking to, I think, of course, we made a big effort to communicate it. Of course, there were people like, I forgot all about it. So Monday morning, there were some headaches. But overall, people are saying it's moving pretty well. One person raised the question, she was on the Rio hydraulic loop west of Route 29 and encountered some construction work at Earlysville Road. Is that something that's going to be going on for an extended period of time?
It's nighttime paving.
Nighttime paving.
Okay. How long will that, do we think, until that's completed? Just for folks who are using that as an alternate route, to avoid construction and make more construction, I think there was some frustration there. Just curious if that's going to be.
Let me see if I can get my schedule for that meeting and see how long it's going to be.
If we get it before the meeting's over, we'll
should
tell
have
you.
that
If not,
time.
we'll tell. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Thank you.
That's
Thank you
it.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Good.
Mark.
There's enough on the table right now.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Kristen?
I'm good.
Brad?
The only thing I have, I guess, is getting more real-time notification of accidents and stuff. This morning was, I guess, an indicator of how quickly we might need to try to notify drivers
Yeah.
of an accident ahead. the 29 Express service has been running on time all week, except for this morning when that accident occurred.
So it has been running on time?
Yeah, every
Okay.
day it's been hitting its marks. And it was designed with that flexibility to get around any kind of congestion. But of course, had we known that that accident was up at Myers Drive, we would have probably looped around Berkmar like we did.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
by the time we get into the congestion related to an accident, it's harder to get out. So I was thinking just now that maybe something that we could look into is a LED sign further up north or even down south that is changed when there's an accident, being able to say, accident ahead, consider an alternate route. I don't know how quickly we can respond to that, but it might reduce some frustration if people know that they're...
Okay, let's put that on our list of something to,
I was going to say tweeting and all that, but of course we don't want people
well,
checking.
yeah, but you don't want everybody checking their phone while they're driving.
Text and drive. If you're-
Nobody does that, right? Yeah.
Bill, there's some of that that we can
There's-
respond to now. I mean, we have a pretty detailed incident management plan. We had that incident management plan meeting with all the emergency responders. And what we've done, the Lane Corman, the design builder, and VDOT, and all the other emergency responder organizations, is develop a tiered system of accidents. So we have a tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is a minor incident like this morning, fender-bender type of thing, where it's going to be cleared up in 5 to 10 minutes, no injuries. And that's something that we notify the Traffic Operations Center, notify Albemarle County Police to respond if necessary, clear it up really quickly and move on. Tier 2 is what you're talking about there. It's something that is going to be a longer duration. We may want to consider detour routes, and that's where we would deploy those message boards. We would have Lane Corman, they have extra ones at the yard. They would deploy those to let people know in advance, there's an accident here, it's not going to be cleared up in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it may be. Consider using Berkmar as an alternate route or whatever the message needs to be.
Well, we may want to think about that criteria a little bit during the summer. And we also may want to think, Lou, I don't quite remember how messages get out to other transportation, the public transit agencies. So we might want to think about that a little bit. What I hear Brad saying is, I run John, it would have been nice to know about it because my 29 Express bus would have done something different.
Well, the tier 2 would trigger notification, media alerts, radio, television, news, whatever it may be.
And I'm just talking out loud. Maybe we don't have any tiers for the next 90 days.
True.
Let's just think through it. Let's just think through it.
Pre-positioning those LED
Yeah.
signs so
Yeah,
you don't
they're
have to
there.
haul them up there.
Right.
Again,
Well, we do have the ones already there.
Yeah.
that we can use.
so,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, yeah, the Jaunt, CAT, UPS, FedEx, all of them are dispatching their drivers and so forth, but the average driver who just got on the road and that accident happened 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago.
That's right.
They're not going to, the radio's not going to respond fast enough. What they're going to do is see the environment around them, so that's where the signs come in.
Yeah.
And it just, again, setting the
Okay.
tone of the day, the morning,
Well,
whatever it may be.
this afternoon, we're going to spend some time with our observations list. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day. We're going to be out there a little and look at some of these things because you do have to take all of these suggestions in and then try to balance them in the right context of, okay, this is what we saw the first 3 days, and we could make a decision to do something that's not so beneficial for the next 30 days. So let's we'll keep them on our list. We're going to talk about them. You want a considered opinion, not sort of a off-the-hip opinion, and kind of like we did last time, a couple of those thoughts. And then we'll get back to you on these things. Without letting, well, here's what we usually do, get in the way. First of all, we'll just look at the situations and see what we think is the best way to respond. Thank you. Thank you.
I would just offer a comment about the marketing campaign penetration. My 16-year-old daughter recognized it, and she said as we were driving through the intersection, "Is this the place that's worth the drive?"
Oh, wow. Cool. All right.
There you go.
All right. There you go. There you go. Is this the place? Well, good for her. Yeah, good for
Very
her.
unaware of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, cool.
Obviously a brilliant child.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay. We're busily, I know, with the city, looking at the bids that came in on Best Buy, and got a little note about that, so, or Best Buy, Hillsdale, all running together. Henry?
Yeah, you mentioned before the decision about alternate routes, and I agree with you. You cannot have a lot of alternate routes because then it creates mass confusion. The get-around map is the one thing to go for with people who want to study the alternate routes on their own. But for the detour, and I mentioned it to you before, the detour is quite complicated, and depending if you're going like southbound, you don't realize, if you don't know, that the detour takes not the first traffic light, but the second traffic light. So I think there we need a better and much more visible detour signage. And it may be, outside of standard practice, but something that is really visible, not some little sign on the side. There's a number and some orange background, black arrow.
Or maybe even something that says at second signal or something.
That's what I think, next signal.
I actually had that, I came in from the airport at 3 o'clock yesterday morning, so didn't have any trouble, but that left thing was a little confusing.
Yeah,
where it was
if you don't know, and that's what's happening at 29th Place.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to make the turn there because not knowing anything, but knowing mentally the map of Charlottesville, that's the way to get to Rio Road east.
Yeah.
That's why they're there, because they're not aware that the official detour takes one more traffic light.
Yeah,
So
we're going to take a close look at that this afternoon.
try to do
Absolutely.
something unusual and big and up in the air, hanging off the arm on the traffic lights or something that probably gets you to big.
Let's look at
The
it.
sign says, "Not yet."
We need the Liberty tax guy or whatever, the detour man.
Yeah, but even that guy, he is on the side and alternate traffic.
Well, we're not going to have that guy.
You don't see the guy, and you don't see some of the, what I'm saying is you don't see some of the detour signs. Because they're there where the Liberty tax guy normally stands. And you have a truck next to you or other cars, you just don't see it. You don't know it's there. So
Okay.
something creative. I hate to tell you.
Creative is good.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
It's good.
Bill,
Okay.
What else do we know about the accident this morning? Was it?
Dave knows a lot about it. Just briefly tell him. Dave knows about it because he stopped it.
I'm not going to get into any speculation about fault.
No, don't do that.
There was a pickup truck and a larger boom truck not involved with the work out here, that was traveling 29 south to go to 64, 250 bypass. They got together a little bit, no injuries, minor damage, almost no damage to it was a side swipe. It was, quite honestly, one or the other, I'm not sure which, tried to make a lane change and didn't look to see that there was another vehicle there. For fear of probably somebody in the future saying you made some mistake, one of the drivers did not want to move their vehicle out of the lane until pictures were taken and the police came. So I took a bunch of pictures. I just happened to be in the area when it happened. I didn't see it shortly after. And then when Albemarle County Police came, the vehicle was moved out of the lanes to try to go back up. And Lane Corman, part of our contract with them is we require them to have a record service on call. And so Charlottesville record was called. They responded in about 15 minutes, towed the vehicle to Colonial Auto right there, where she could get her tire fixed.
And where did that happen?
This happened just north of Myers Drive in southbound lane.
Okay.
Philip, the paving is scheduled to be complete June 10th. They're paving 7 p.m. to 5 a.m.
7 p.m. to 5 a.m. scheduled to be complete June the 10th. June 10th. June 10th.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm keeping an eye on time here. Our milestone chart, as far as the GSI, the most glaring error here is that in this period, May 23rd to September 2nd, we said 1% complete. We've blown that out of the water, but we'll underestimate that until it's time to finish. Up at 29 widening, still haven't finished the gas line or the phase 1 grading, but you'll see out at phase 2 grading, obviously they made a decision to move up into that area. It continues to be ahead of schedule. It's about 30% complete. At Berkmar, all the clearing north of the river done. The north abutment is done, making some progress on some of the grading on the south as well as the utility relocation.
Is there a problem with the utility relocation?
No, I don't believe there's.
Well, I tell you, on Route 29 widening, the gas line relocation is not on the critical path, and that's.
So it's not a crisis, it's
Right, no, it's not a crisis.
No. And then on the power lines, Dominion Virginia Power had some emergency work over on the other side of the mountain a couple weeks ago, distracted them from this project. They're back, they're almost done, they're probably finishing up tomorrow. So
good.
No issues with that.
No issues other than it didn't get done when it said it was going to get done. Pure construction. This Berkmar thing is really has really come out of the gate very, very well. If you get a chance, without being in the way, to see what's going on either behind the coals, or if you happen to go to the corner of the parking lot behind the Sam's Club, there's a little path there. There's also some construction fence that says stay out, so don't go any further. But if you want to get a good view of what's going on at Berkmar, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's right where the construction camera is as well. Hillsdale, bids, Hillsdale. We got bids on Monday, and we'll see what those are here somewhere. So those are under review now with the city. If you'll remember, we advertised March 30th, and that's a good deal. We need to get that project moved. Route 29 and 250, I'm very glad that the lanes were open May the 20th. I want to see them out of there. I want to see the barrels gone. I want to see those guys out of there, not visible. If they're behind the wall, they can stay there forever. But I want to see them.
Hopefully not.
I want to see them. Well, I really don't care. Hopefully not. But they need to be out of there. But they got the lanes open, so that's a good thing. I'll take a little time to settle in. Mark, I don't know, I've driven that ramp a couple times. I'm good with how it looks, how it feels, how it rides. But those barrels need to go. I won't say anything more about that.
I'll just say one thing, and it shows up in the picture. I think one of the things is I am wondering, because I sat in the Best Buy lot and watched them, if people are confused when they look at the sign, they think that you can't be in the second lane except if you're going 250 east.
That arrow is for the apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's what happened, but I watched so many people who were trying the old maneuver down there where they try to slip into the right-hand lane at the last second.
Yeah.
Rather than going on. Maybe it's just a learned
I
behavior.
think a lot of people who drive a route every day don't read the signs.
Yeah.
So they're just feeling it the way they've always felt it, and it won't work a couple of times, and they'll realize and they'll figure it out.
This is one that we might have to watch for a while so we don't solve the short-term issue but create a long-term problem. And we'll just have to observe it for a bit.
Mark, can I ask when you were out there observing it?
This Saturday afternoon.
The Saturday after it opened?
So the day after.
The 21st?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with you. For a couple of days there, I was watching it as well, and I saw the same thing. And then all of a sudden, about Tuesday, Wednesday, I would actually see people in the right lane, and then they would realize, oh, I can get over a lane, and then they'd go up and shoot right onto the ramp. So they're figuring it out. It takes some time, but they're getting used to it.
I have this picture now open in front of me. I could wait if the answer is complicated, but I'll ask it now. There's a sign right in the Best Buy driveway to the right, between the driveway and the ramp, that says right lane must turn right.
Correct.
And if I were driving that, and taking that exit, I would assume that if I was in that right lane going up onto the bypass, or onto the bypass, that I would then have to take some right really quickly, and I wouldn't be able to get on the bypass.
That's, the intent of the message of that sign is that if you're in that right lane, you have to take the ramp.
I know, that's always been the intent, but now
Yeah.
it means that the right lane of the two lanes going on the bypass, I'm going to have to turn on Georgetown? It's like, I don't think that's what it means anymore.
Let's add that to some things we're going to think about here. Because,
Exit or something.
yeah,
Yeah, or something, or
well,
maybe
let's
even
just,
not, because it says exit only up there. I don't know if you need that second sign, which seems.
I don't know that you need it at all, is what I'm thinking, but I'm sure there's 100 other people that thinks it absolutely has to be there in the world.
Or the driveway,
But I'm not sure.
to
But
kind
I
of
don't
give you
think
that
that there's
indication.
anywhere to put it
Yeah.
farther on.
Well, there might be somewhere to put it, which is
It's
in
redundant in a way there.
which is in a building somewhere, usually somewhere else. So let's take a look. That's a good observation. All right, Dave, let's get to the project updates. It's about 10 to 12. I'd like to get these folks out of here by 12:30, so kind of focus on the big news.
Okay, 29250 interchange project this week. They're completing the light foundations, and I apologize for some of the leftover little abbreviations there, but the barrier wall along 250, there were a couple of areas there where it wasn't completed because of drainage structures that had to be hand formed. They've been working on those. That's the same thing here, the barrier, the drainage structures. Pavement markings for 250, but also pavement markers. These are the raised snow plowable markers, the little metal things with the reflective shields in them. So they've been putting those in this week. Grading and topsoil behind the sound walls, which has been going on for a while, and that's what Philip mentioned. If they're behind the walls, they can stay there forever, grading that. Completing the ground sign installation. Looks like they may have one that's questionable. Installing the final guardrail on 250 and completing the right-of-way fence, which is located generally behind that wall on the north side of 250 bypass. So we just looked at this picture, and you can see here this dedicated ramp lane and this split lane that you can either go straight down to take the 250 eastbound ramp or the ramp here up to 250 bypass westbound. Again, this is people in the process of learning how this functions. It's designed much like an interstate ramp, quite honestly, when you have the two lane exits and the option. So it's squeezing as much efficiency within as much existing right-of-way as we have, as the Secretary mentioned earlier. Excellent. So lane closures this week. Unfortunately, we would like to be able to say we have no lane closures this week. We're completely done, but that's just not the case at this time. 250 bypass westbound right lane and shoulder closure to finish up those sections of the barrier walls and to do it safely and get concrete trucks in and out. Barracks Road to 250 bypass eastbound with a right shoulder closure. That is to complete a section of guardrail that has to tie to that barrier wall that's there now and taper back so we don't have a blunt end there. And mobile lane closures for pavement markings as well as the pavement markers. Excellent. So over the next 2 weeks, final grading, seeding, stabilizing slopes, that sort of thing, making it look pretty. Converting the temporary sediment basin to a permanent stormwater management basin. So many of you have driven through there in that loop ramp from Emmett Street south to 250 bypass eastbound. There's a large basin there. Basically, it's just modifying that riser structure. They were using that as their temporary sediment basin. Clean it out, modify the structure, move on. Punch list activities. These are all the small little items that VDOT and the city have gone out and reviewed the project and said, well, you forgot to do this, you got to tighten this bolt, all these little things that they need to finish up before we can actually terminate the contract with them, make the final payment, and move on. So, any other questions about 29-250? Pete.
Is there a going southbound under the bridge structure, a sidewalk on the westbound side? I thought passing through there a few days ago, I saw somebody on that sidewalk, which now nothing leads to it, nor does it lead anywhere, if I was right.
I don't recall exactly, but I know starting at Morton Drive, there's a sidewalk extending south, and that's where the crossover is from the sidewalk and the median. There's a little goat path that people have been using for years that goes on the west side of 29. Since there was no sidewalk there, people were walking that path and then crossing the ramp and going up toward in front of Best Buy.
I'll look again
The
next time.
sidewalk ends at Cavalier Diner, there at the signal where the crosswalk is.
Yeah. I really thought I saw it underneath the bridge. I'll check and comment back.
Well, you don't need to check. I mean, you can check, but we'll.
Yeah. It just
I
seemed like there was that
don't
one
think there
short
is,
piece
but-
with somebody standing on
There
it.
is a narrow, flat concrete surface under the bridge.
There would be that, yeah.
Okay, then I may.
The narrow
It's not a
flat concrete
sidewalk.
surface, but it's not a sidewalk, it's not 88.
It just caught my, yeah, exactly, but
Yeah.
somebody was on it, and I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
why aren't you over on the sidewalk?
In the middle.
And that's the learned habit, that's what people have been using for years, walking through there.
The same thing as the people driving.
I don't know, I'm looking at these signs here a bit, and we're gonna have to, let's, John and Dave, look at this a little bit more.
Any other questions on 29-250 Morgan?
What's the latest estimate on when all those barrels will be gone and punch list to meet?
We've been told that by the end of this week, my honest estimation is it's probably going to get into a little bit of next week, maybe the middle of next week, probably with the shoulder closures. We've, as Bill mentioned, it's been conveyed to the contractor, finish your
I've made a
work,
couple
you know.
phone calls.
There's a lot of motivation there for them to vacate that area. But we also don't want to leave anything unsafe or unfinished. Okay, we'll move on to the next project, right grade separated intersection project. There's a lot of things on this list. I'll go through them very quickly and then give you just a little bit of summary of what's happened so far this week. But what was planned for this week was the crossover closure, which happened, setting barrier walls, which happened. This is the right crossover closure. Mass excavation, which is ongoing, moving part of that 60,000 cubic yards out of there. Grade beam excavation, which has begun. This is what engineers call moment slabs. So if you hit a retaining wall, there's something there to keep it from overturning. That's being excavated, will be installed and poured in the near future. Backfilling the retaining wall and leveling pad, that's just, that was what was under the steel, so to speak, from that story, part of that structure there that now that it's opened up can be backfilled. Lagging preparation, we talked about bringing the lagging boards down between the piles. That's all ongoing, and they're continuing to have prepare the lagging for installation, continued installation. The the fire department connections, actually making those final connections now that they've got it opened up, is occurring this week. So those will actually be functional here shortly, although we won't need them for any reason until the project's open. A couple of drainage structures here on the south side of the project that they've been finishing up. One of them is actually within the limits of the excavation behind the barrier wall, so we're actually able to work on that. Anchoring the barrier wall. Fall protection installation. They've got a very neat system on the backside of the barrier walls where they run cables down so all their workers can just click right into the cable and they're protected from falls. So that's an OSHA requirement. Pulling the plates, obviously the plates are gone. Prepping the beam seats, that should be a T there. That's been completed and they'll continue, completed for the sections where they've placed the beams. They'll continue going down before they set more beams. Back wall forming, mobilizing the crane to the crane pad, which obviously occurred because they set some of the beams last night, installing the lighting systems. You've probably seen some of that. We support this because instead of having these, what we call light plants out there where they point in every which direction of blind drivers, all the lights are focused into the excavation and not toward traffic. So that's a big improvement there. Setting beams.
Can
So,
I ask a
yes.
light question? While
Yes.
you're- The other night, or yesterday morning, in the dark, as I was coming south through the intersection, at that next kind of intersection, there was, I guess it was a police car, but it was hard to tell if it was a police car doing just police business or if it was there because of the construction. But it had its blue lights doing their thing, and it really was blinding coming down and trying to see where you were going. Is that always there?
if it was blue lights, it was a police car.
Yeah.
They might have had somebody pulled over.
That's
for
fine,
speeding
but
too
is it permanently there, or was it just so it's not a normal thing?
South of the work?
It was coming north. It was on the north side, on the median, or with
Yeah, it very well could be, we like.
But if it's there for traffic control and helping, it's not helping just visually, because it's really blinding as you
Yeah.
drive through the intersection.
Yeah, we like to have the blue lights out there because it slows people down. And they don't speed through the work zone.
They can't
as
see the
much.
construction workers. Suddenly, I had been able to see bodies, and suddenly I couldn't see anything but those lights.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
I have.
And I'm old, so.
My eyes are hypersensitive to light
Yeah.
too. I usually have an issue with that as well. Usually they don't turn all of their lights on. They'll have the dimmer ones just
They
on
might
the
just
back.
talk to them about doing the lower level of that.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe just that night they were super bright.
Yeah, that's a good observation. It messes with my eyes a little bit as well. So. Okay. Setting beams, glad to say, and I think Philip said earlier, they set 13 beams last night. They are 3 shifts ahead of schedule right now, and they just started this on Sunday night, or effectively Monday morning. It's going much faster than they had planned, which is great news. Everything we're seeing is that's going to keep moving with that momentum. The plan last night was to set 9 beams. That's one of the sections of the bridge, but they were actually able to start on that second section and get 4 more beams in. So I think after the second beam, they really had it down to a science and how they were picking the beams and setting them and getting them all aligned. It's more than just picking something off a truck and setting it in place. A little bit of art to it. Post-tensioning and grouting will start today, and that's where they take a section of these beams and they run basically a cable through it and they tension it so that it pulls all the beams together. And then they grout that so it can't move and water can't get into it. Just the traffic shift overall obviously occurred, milling the asphalt occurred, inclinometer installation. These are vertical tubes that measure if something is moving. It'll tell us if we have a wall that's moving this way. So we monitor those on a daily basis to make sure the walls aren't moving, so those were installed. Pre-tying the grade beams, I mentioned before, removing the temporary signal that came down the first night, Sunday night, when they began the closure, pouring the permanent traffic signal foundations. I know last night they were working on the one right there at the south entrance to Fashion Square Mall at 29th Place. Proofing conduit runs, this is basically making sure that you don't have one of your conduits clogged up, so they'll run these little machines to them to make sure that they're clean and they can actually pull wires to them. Radio traffic cabinet installation, pouring the pedestrian signal foundations. Okay, so these pictures were taken earlier in the week and they're all pretty much outdated by now. So you see here, this is where the plates used to be. This is on the north side looking south, and they've been milling pavement in here. This is one of the pavement mills, but you see all the piles here that are ready for the retaining wall construction. Next picture. This picture was taken Tuesday, I believe. It shows the excavation. Notice the picture was taken Monday. It shows the excavation here alongside the abutment structure and some of the equipment here that they're using to do that. This was done very, very quickly. Basically within 1 10-hour shift, they had all the plates off and this all excavated out. Next slide. And then by, I believe this was Tuesday.
This is all Monday.
All Monday? Okay, their days are running together.
This is all Monday.
So by the
I keep
evening
up with
shift, these pictures are taken at their shift break, which is 6 to 8. So about 7 p.m. on Monday, you can see the entire abutment A is exposed on the western side. So this is Hardy's up here, and you can see the pads there for the beams to sit on. The back wall is all tied and will be poured after the beams are set. So a lot of excavation, a lot of hauling material out of here has happened very, very quickly. Next slide. This is looking down from south to north, the abutment B. You see here the B1. And you see the beam seat preparations there, the back walls. This shoring is actually out now that they've excavated it all out. This picture was taken about 10:15 last night. This is the first beam that was set. This is a 265-ton crane here in the middle of the excavation, and they brought it from the 29 widening section south and then into the lane that was closed adjacent to work here. Picked it off the truck, set it. Took about 15 to 20 minutes to set it and get it aligned right. And by the time it set a couple of beams, it was about a 30-minute turnaround time per beam. So it's going very well. A good, safe operation. They had 2 of their safety managers out there last night making sure that nobody was getting underneath the beams when they're suspended. And so we were very happy with the production that occurred last night. This is a picture looking down the beam after it was set from the east side to the west side. And unfortunately, I don't have the picture of this morning when we had 9 beams there. Weren't able to get that in. So lane closures, phase 2 traffic closure is in place. This means that the barrier wall is in place, the rider crossovers closure, we have the detour set up. It's really not going to be changing on a day-to-day basis. It won't be changing at all. The only thing that we have is the supplemental lane closures at night so they can bring beams in or bring concrete trucks in. But between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., we'll always have a lane there open northbound and southbound. Over the next 2 weeks, the way they're going now, I don't know, they might finish it in the next 2 weeks, but continuing that mass excavation, back wall and leveling pads we looked at before, all the steel's tied to the back wall behind the beams on each end, lagging preparation and installation, finishing the fire department connections, the final connections below grade, a couple of drainage structures here that they have to do some touching up on, but they're already installed and in the ground. Just actually, this 460, 470, 520, I believe that one's already done. Forming the form preparation, so they have all these pre-made forms that they assemble over on our office location at Woodburn Road that they're going to use to form the retaining walls to greatly speed up that process. And then continuing the beam seat preparation and beam installation. They'll have to move their crane back because as of right now, with all the beams they installed last night, they have to move their crane back to get a little room to work. Back wall forming, mobilizing the crane to the pad, which is a Herculean effort in itself, moving a crane that large. Setting more beams, coring abutment holes. There are conduits that go through the back of the abutment into the beams, run through the beams to the other side of the road, so they'll drill those holes. They started that last night, but there's several more they need to do. Post-tensioning and grouting, as I talked about before, those sections that they need to tie together. Continue with the pre-tying of the grade beams and pulling the conductor cables through those conduits. The lane closures are the same as we just talked about. So this is what we're seeing out there now during the day, and at night is what we're going to be seeing until the project is opened up to traffic. So really don't expect any changes there. Any questions on that?
Construction language is a great thing because when you post-tension concrete beams, you put them in compression.
Yes.
Because if you put them in tension, they would actually become weaker. But steel is stronger in tension. So the post-tensioning means you're pulling these steel rods with plates on them that are pushing against the concrete beams and putting the concrete beams in compression, which is where they get their strength. So I think people did this all on purpose, just to kind of keep us guessing.
So we should change it to post-compression?
Yeah, it should be. It should be post-compression.
So any,
But that's the term, yeah.
Fun facts to know and tell.
There you go, you can drop that at your next party.
don't recommend it.
Haven't tried it.
Any questions about Rio? I mean, this is, a lot of work was going on last night. In addition to setting those beams, they were continuing to dig dirt out and haul it to the Berkmar alignment. They were doing the stamped concrete in the corners there. They were, working on the signal. So a lot of different activities. We saw that little lull that we talked about leading up to May 23rd, and now we're right back up at even faster pace. So.
Do you have an idea when they'll be done with the digging up? At this rate? Barring any severe weather conditions?
Well, we've talked about August 5th a lot.
I mean,
there's no
just the
guarantees.
digging out, just
Oh,
the
just-
excavation.
Well, there's a lot of variables there because they can't dig out all the dirt underneath the bridge until they get all of the
That's right.
the beams set and the back wall, and then they can actually dig that earth out. So it's probably going to be, we've talked about 3 weeks to remove all that material. The rate they're going now, it's going to be faster than 3 weeks, barring any tropical storm.
If they sustain that rate.
Yes, yes. But it's working very smoothly with the trucks coming in, backing the trucks in with the spotters, loading the trucks. I don't know if you've noticed the size of the buckets on these excavators. 2 scoops and the truck's full and he's going. And, the other thing that's working very well, we talked about at our last meeting, is the all red phase, quote unquote. I don't really want to call it all red phase because I think they are keeping the green southbound for the dump trucks to get them out. It's been working very well.
Right.
The red times have been below 30 seconds. So I think somebody gave me some statistics earlier, and I'll mess them up. It was like 18 seconds for 1 truck, 22 seconds for 2 trucks, and 30 seconds for 3 trucks. So you get a little bit more efficiency. Getting that first truck moving is the hard part. But that seems to be working extremely well in a very safe situation. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So Route 29 widening this week. We're seeing a little bit of not a slowdown, but some resource shifting to Rio. So they're going to knock out a bunch of work down there, and then some of their crews are going to go back up to 29 widening. But the firewall construction there at Asheville Boulevard continues this week. Cut to fill grading, just pushing dirt around on the project basically. Pipe installation, there's storm drain pipes, phase 3 gas main, which they should be wrapping that up fairly soon, say another 2 weeks, and then that's the last phase of the gas main relocation. Jack and bore, they've moved to structure 11-4 now. They've completed 2 of the jack and bores. They've gotten through, so they've moved on to the 3rd one. Slip line in the box culverts is interesting. Basically, they're 1/2-inch thick steel pipes that they're pushing through, and then they grout the space between the pipe and the box culvert. It gives it, it cleans up any issues with water infiltrating or exiting the box culvert because it's aging, and it gives it more structural stability. And erosion control and seeding throughout the project. This is one of the jack and bore heads. This is what they call the can with the drill head on it, coming out of the west side of the slope. So they've drilled all the way under the road. This one, I believe, was a little bit under 200 feet long. So it's a pretty big size. That's a 60-inch pipe that they're pushing.
Does it spin as it's working?
It does. It spins and it cuts its way through, and then sometimes they'll hit a rock and have to stop and jackhammer it out. And then it's an interesting process that I know at one point when they were getting to the end of this, they applied about 900,000 pounds of force to the back of it. So it's large machines doing pretty impressive things.
2 weeks ago, you saw this from the cleaner end.
Right. But you see, we've got a stream diversion over here, so we've got all of our clean water running through these 2 box culverts, and now these are the 2 box culverts that they're putting the liners in. So lane closures, depending on need, they'll do a left or right lane closure, northbound or southbound at night. I know that they had a lane closure up there last night for getting those trucks in and out of the median to bring the beams down to Rio. slide. Over the next 2 weeks, continuing the wire wall construction, which is setting them up for the phase 2 traffic shift. Cut to fill grading again. They have a 72-inch pipe and 48-inch pipe that'll be installed. Building the head wall, which is when you look at the pipe, you see the nice flat concrete work there around it to prevent erosion around that pipe. Phase 3 gas main relocation, hopefully wrapping up within the next 2 weeks. Finishing the jack and bore, structure 11-4, mobilizing that crew to another structure, which is 1220, a little bit north of there. Dominion utility pole relocations, I think this is going to be earlier than the next 2 weeks. I think they're going to finish that up this week. They only had 3 poles left. They're back now working, their contractors working on site, so it shouldn't take them long to finish that up at all. So that should be finished either late this week or early next week. And then erosion control and seeding throughout the project. And also, once Dominion moves their poles, then all the telecom lines that are on those poles can come and jump to the new line. That's all outside of the roadway. Generally, they're on the western side of the road. And then lane closures are the same. In fact, lane closures really on all 3 of the design build projects for this summer are going to be the same as week after week, changing. Any questions about 29 widening? Okay. Let's move on to Brookmar Extended. Placing embankment and millings from Rio. So this is all the asphalt they milled out. They took up there, they spread out right there at their entrance, so they're not tracking mud out of their work zone up there. They also put millings over on, they have a logging road that they have the right to use from Rio Mills Road. It goes over kind of to the middle of their alignment, so they're not hauling and dumping in residential areas at night. Setting MSE panels at abutments A and B. Just continuing that, bring that fill up on both those abutments on the north and south side. Routing the CSL tubes across sonic logging tubes we talked about in those drilled shafts, filling those up with grout so we don't have voids in there. Stripping the forms at abutment A from the last concrete pour, erosion control and seeding. Shooting the north mass, this is not going to happen this week. We still don't have all the information that we need. We expect it's probably going to, that first little shot up there by poles is probably going to be in a couple of weeks. Not holding anything up. They're way ahead of schedule on that anyway. Drilling the next mass, that'll obviously be delayed a couple of weeks as well, because why go out and drill that and then they just get filled up with dirt. Installing the drainage structure head wall at 21.8. Installing the crossing pipe, the 84-inch, this is right up there behind the coals at the northern end of the project. Pretty impressive pipe run there, a couple hundred feet of 84-inch pipe. I've got a nice stream diversion in there as well. Continuing with the drilled shafts at the pier locations right there at Rio Mills Road. Core drill and grout the shafts, Pier 1's column 3. We had a question about when we did our cross-sonic logging test, it showed some anomalies in the bottom 2 feet. So we wanted to core down through it and see what was really there to see if some corrective action is needed. So they're going to, they've already drilled it. We're waiting on the results of the test, and then they will go ahead and grout that closed. And then tying pier and column steel, there's Philip, I think when we went out there last night, you can see the large sections of rebar cages that look very similar to what was put in the ground that will actually extend up, and they've got their formwork there to start bringing their piers up out of the ground. So this is the location that Philip was talking about earlier, up on the hill. I think it's the best view in Albemarle County, but it might be debatable. Looking at abutment A here, bringing the MSE walls back, place some more fill in here. The formwork, this is the formwork they're stripping off this week in the last concrete pour. The drilled shaft location down here is still very active. I think we've got, I think they're going to do another pour today, which will make 5 of 6 drilled shafts completed. And then abutment B over here, still sitting there waiting for some beams to be set on it later this summer. Next slide.
Have there been any accidental discharges of dirt or spills into the river? Or
No.
into the...
Not from us. No. We have whatever is pumped out of the hole goes through what we call filter bags, which are about the size of these tables, big square bags, and it all gets filtered through there so you don't have sediment, and there's been no hydraulic fluid or diesel fuel or anything like that that's been spilled. Pretty well contained in that area.
There were some reports of sediments getting into the river about a month or two ago. We looked into it, and it was not. It was assumed at first it could have been Berkmar. It was actually north of there, and it was a non-VDOT project. So if you heard something about it,
I did,
Yeah, it was not VDOT.
Okay.
It was there.
Thank you. Any more pointy fingers? Lane closures, we don't really have a lane closure on Rival Mills Road, but periodically when we have trucks come in, there'll be a flagger that may stop traffic, so a concrete truck can get in or out, but no real lane closure. Over the next few weeks, continuing to place that dirt that they're digging out at Rio up on the Berkmar project, MSE panels, prepping the steel for the column forms. That's almost done. There's a little bit more for that, but they've really made a lot of headway on that. Erosion control and seeding, they're on the next mast to shoot, installing another drainage structure. When I say crossing 7, this is putting temporary pipes in so they can install their stream diversions to install the pipes. Pier 2, column 2, which should be the last drill shaft they need to do, and tying the pier to column steel, so we'll start seeing those piers coming up out of the ground soon. And lane closures associated with that are just the flagging operations. Any questions on Berkmar? Okay, we're good.
Al? It's your baby here.
Thank you, Philip. May 23rd was indeed a big day, and part of that was we had bids opened on Hillsdale Drive. The city received 3 bids, one from Fielder's Choice, one from Branch Highways, one from Faulkner Construction. The city is reviewing those bids currently. We will assist and help them with that upon their completion of their review. We want to make sure those are balanced and they've got all the items in there. Work is continuing on utility relocations. Things continue to go well. As Dave mentioned earlier, Dominion Power had pulled off for emergency work. They're back in the area. It may not be the same group that's helping us here, but they're still well ahead of schedule on that. Next 2 weeks, the city will release the notice of the apparent low bidder on June 6th. Pre-construction conference will be held on June 22nd. Utility relocations will continue for services to the commercial buildings. That will probably be wrapped up by the mid-June or so. Business relocations continue. That's going well. And the rest of the utility relocations along the alignment do continue. That's Dominion, Virginia Power, CenturyLink, and Comcast.
Any questions? When do you expect approximately actual construction starting?
The end of June is when the city has said they will issue notice to commence construction.
When we get, thank you. Any other questions on Hillsdale? When we get into the construction, I'd like to invite Tony or Jeanette to come to a meeting, and the city's managing this directly, and give them an opportunity to kind of talk about how the project will move forward. They've been great to work with. I just showed you this. This is kind of a scorecard that I want to ask Dave to kind of keep filled in for us, sort of our report card on all those interim milestones. And when all of the rows are green is the time that we would know where Lane Corman finished up in terms of the interim milestones. So as items are completed, we'll keep this up to date, and it's a race to the green.
Will some of those come and go, like pedestrian refuge areas accessible? Will they be accessible for a while and then not accessible and accessible again, or each of those are kind of finished?
What we're interested here is it's done.
Permanently. Okay.
Yeah, it's done.
All right.
Okay, so this tracks with the list of milestones we looked at 2 weeks ago. These are the milestones, obviously kind of paraphrased here a little bit, but these are the milestones that have to be met to say where Lane Corman finished in terms of incentive.
So all turning movement's open, not just today, but forever as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And I'm betting we'll be all green in July. I'll take any bets in July, before the end of July.
You are taking or not taking?
I will. No, I will. I'll take it. All righty, this is our time for a budget update, paying some more bills on the design build projects, about 3.6 million. No more change orders, so that follows over to commensurate equal reduction in remaining contract value on the 29-250 interchange. Pay some more bills, a little more exposure on that one. I'm not exactly what that might be for. But
I think it's an outstanding change order for additional handrails.
Okay, all right. So there may be a little bump in where we expect that one to end up, but not bad shooting in all fairness. The adaptive signals paid a bill, remaining contract value, and the rest of that money is for phase 2.
Yes.
Which, remember, is kind of turning on the adaptive part. Hillsdale, we just still kept it with our budget until we see where things come in. And I know if you're looking and thinking, well, geez, that a little over what we thought the budget was going to be, don't get too excited, because this budget is a couple years old, this number. So we might need, Allison, we may need to do a little shift and tilting here to make that work, but we're in good shape. Overall, and these are the changes, remember, just from the last report. From an overall program budget point of view, I think these folks are doing a good job. And it's I know we don't have the train in here. These are the construction projects, but for managing $150 million worth of work, it's a lot of stuff getting done, and that's good. Any questions on the budget? There's not. That's our last agenda item. Henry, any new business or wrap up? We've got a lot to look at this afternoon out there in the field, so we'll get on our way. Chris?
Thanks.
Anything? Thank you. Brad? Thank you very much. Kristen? Thank you. Mark? Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. And to everyone who tuned in, thank you. Be careful. Have a good day. And please keep those observations coming in, because the more eyes on things, the better off for us. Take care. Thank you.